So let's talk about tariffs. Now, we've had calls from existing clients and new clients asking us about US tariffs and how it's going to affect them, and more importantly, how it's going to affect the property market. Well, ironically, and we'll come to this in a second, but it could be really positive for the property market. But the reality is most people don't know what a tariff is. They think it's going to affect them direct in their pockets here. It doesn't. The way it works is you're an exporter. You export your good for $100, for example, to the US, and the US now puts a 25% tariff on it, for example. Now that $100 good is now $125 to the US consumer. So the person that pays the tariff is the end user. So that's the US consumer. So what they do is they say, well, actually this is too expensive now. What I'll do is I'll buy something more US grown, homegrown, for example, and they feed the US economy rather than overseas economies. That's the thinking behind it. But it doesn't quite work like that because there are certain things that aren't done in the US. For example, cell phones, hence why Donald Trump said cell phones are exempt, especially the iPhone from China. But the reality is, I personally think this is just for a little bit of attention and to actually start the ball rolling on a number of negotiations to get his way. So we saw how the tariffs affected the market. We saw what happened when, of course, he paused the tariffs. The market then erupts and goes in the positive direction. So the reality is, I think this is going to be short-lived. However, let's say it isn't. I don't actually think it's going to be too much of a problem for the property market. Why? Well, Bank of England will actually have to lower rates quicker because they need to start feeding the economy here. If exporters aren't exporting as much to the US because the US aren't buying our goods, then we have to lower the Bank of England rates. We have to lower the rate. So therefore, the exporters have a little bit more money, or they've got access to money a little bit easier. That's one thing. What does that do if they lower rates? Well, mortgages come down. We've already seen mortgages come down in the last couple of weeks, and we're filming here in mid-April 2025. We've already seen mortgage rates come sub 4%, and we could start to see them edge down to 3.5% if we see any of these tariffs rear its head again, and of course if we see the Bank of England pushing rates down. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if people can borrow more money, they can then upscale their houses, upscale property, first time buyers can get onto the ladder. And what does that do? Well, that feeds the property market again and then increases the prices. And then what does that do for renters? Well, if renters still can't afford to buy because property prices are now increasing, well, what happens? They rent for longer. And who's that great for? Well, it's great for landlords. And that's why every single person that's been calling through, we're saying actually these tariffs could be a great thing for the property market and for your investment. Hope that helps.